Microphone check, 1, 2. All right. What's up, y'all? Whoa, so the Indiana Fever season is over. Caitlin Clark's season is over. Yet the same things are all over my timeline when it comes to that. So I just want to do the post-mortem today. We'll get into the future and all that stuff in future episodes. But this was, I will say, for anybody who's just watching me for the first time or hasn't been around for the entire time or has caught bits and pieces, this was perhaps the most, I don't even know if I want to say perhaps, I think this was the most fascinating sports story of my lifetime. Um, Obviously, I'm a little biased because it helped me through a rough patch, but just from the layers, the interest, and everything else, I think this was the most interesting sports story I've ever seen. And I'd love to write a book on it, actually. If any of you are literary agents, hit me up. I'd love to write a book on it. For those of you who don't know, the origins of this show came about, I was between media professional gigs. If you follow me on X, I posted about how I'm proud I've been able to make it on my own. But in the search for an identity for this channel, there happened to be an interesting Caitlin Clark story one day, and I talked about it, and a lot of people came in. And then I talked about her again, and a lot of people came in. And then I talked about her again, and a lot of people came in. And I was genuinely interested. I was genuine, like it was out of genuine curiosity. I found the topic fascinating as a basketball fan first. I've been a basketball fan my whole career. For those of you who don't know me, I started, I guess you could say, I went to University of Maryland where I called sports games there. I called games for the Terps. I started calling games I didn't know the rules for so that I could eventually call football and basketball. I was an intern on Around the Horn, the earliest iteration of that show. Max Kellerman's was the host. I got Tony Reali's, I'm name dropping, I guess, in a way. I got Tony Reali's suit the first day that he hosted. PTI was in the adjoining office. Wilbon and Kornheiser. I bring that up because that experience helped me to think like a producer, to realize when a topic is resonating with people. So that was a lesson I learned way back then. Then I came up to New York. I worked on Max's show on Fox Sports. Before I had a period of time where I was in between jobs. I was moonlighting as a stand-up comedian while waiting tables and bartending. That was before I got into ESPN Radio, where I produced for Stephen A. and Max, and I was a sidekick on Max's show. And I thought we were a little ahead of our time at that point in time with some of the stuff that we did. But again, the producer mind got to going. And this is also just to let you know how long I've been doing this and what I've been through in the business to illustrate how significant this was. And Ryan Rucco and Ryan did the show last night. And or not the show, did the game last night. We had a show together. So we did the show together on ESPN Radio at that time, and so on and so forth. I wound up working for Sports Illustrated for a long time. I still work at Sirius XM, all sorts of things. And I've been doing this a long time, is kind of the point of that. And when I got to ESPN Radio, in fact, they didn't talk basketball enough for my liking. So I would even rationalize stuff that the Knicks would do because it was something I wanted to discuss. So I was a basketball fan first. But at the same time, throughout my life experiences and professional experiences, I had covered the cross section of sports and society plenty. And I had never been afraid to delve into that. In fact, at times, I got pushback. I received a call from a boss at SI who I won't name, essentially admonishing me for a stance I took, um, which to me I felt was against racism in support of Black folks in America. And, I received a call about being careful about diving into those topics. And obviously there was Colin Kaepernick and so many other things. So it's not as if I hadn't um, explored those areas and I've ever been afraid to explore those areas. But I've also never seen anything quite like what happened around Clark and what is still happening around Clark. I mean, from the basketball standpoint, I think it's clear what you see. You see a generational talent who plays an exciting brand of basketball that differentiates her from her peers. Because I'm not gonna ever lie to the audience. When I first saw Caitlin Clark play, I thought, oh, this is the best chick I ever seen play basketball. As a basketball watcher, player, my whole life, I didn't think this is the best white girl I ever saw play basketball. I will say I did think this is the best chick. That's probably the word that came into my mind. It's probably not the word I should use, right? Like woman. I have a daughter, which has changed my perspective on some things. But point being, that was my instantaneous reaction. And I think a lot of guys had that same reaction around Clark because of her style of play. Now, were there other factors that added to her popularity? Of course. I've always drawn the parallel when it comes to the white thing. I don't think her being white was ever the basis of her popularity or was ever the driving force behind her popularity. But like Eminem, it may have helped, right? Or it probably helped. I've said that with Eminem in the past where, what did Jay-Z say on the song? White Boy blossomed after Dre endorsed him as Flowing Renegade. Awesome, right? And it was his talent and his skill that put him on a certain pedestal, and the whiteness may have been rocket fuel on top of that. And with Caitlin, I think you had a style of play that appealed to your more typical basketball fan that brought a lot of dudes in, brought a lot of NBA fans in. You had the whiteness for whatever that was worth. You had Iowa and the connection with Iowa, because I've seen through the process of this how strong the Iowa fan base is. I can't tell you that I was familiar with Iowa before this. I indeed was not. I did not follow Iowa. I did not really think about Iowa until Caitlin Clark. I know it's in the middle of the country somewhere. But obviously, a lot of people from Iowa supported Caitlin Clark. And that's maybe a different demographic than had typically viewed the WNBA. And then you take into account the number of things that happened in such a short period of time. Because when I talk about a sports story, you go back, I remember covering this for SI, the football stadium, right, at Iowa was sold out you go from this, which by the way, Clark had exploded. I knew about her before this and the South Carolina game. But then you had this in the offseason into the next season at Iowa where they sold out that stadium. I remember covering that. And then plays the whole season at Iowa, goes back to the national championship game. To circle back what I said at the beginning, I watched the Elite Eight game against LSU with Max. And at that time, I remember him saying, "You want to come over for the game?" And I remarked when I got there, like, isn't it crazy that you said, come over for the game? And we were talking about a women's basketball game? Like, that was crazy. And then I remember watching the national championship game from the WrestleMania parking lot. I was there with my son. I didn't imagine this would become what it was then. I'll tell the truth about that. And then, you go from she played. So I know it was April 7th. I know WrestleMania was April 7th. She played April 7th, was drafted 2 weeks later to the WNBA, was playing WNBA games in May. And reality is coming. And what else? The 11 games in 20 days, the turnovers, the Olympic snub, the Diana Taurasi nod of approval, the All-Star game, the Kennedy Carter shoulder check, which then led to the Angel Reese flagrant foul that everybody blew out of proportion, and the Rookie of the Year race that I think did a lot of damage, to be real with you. I think places like ESPN shoving that Rookie of the Year race, pushing it as hard as they did, made and fueled whatever some of the subtext of the racial aspect of the Clark Reese thing was to another level, because I do think there were certain people who professionally and certain people who as fans felt they needed to prop Reese up, or else that they were not doing what was equitable, or whatever the case may be. So that was another wrinkle to this season. On top of that, it kept going and kept going, and there was the All-Star game. And I think after Taurasi and the All-Star game, I thought it would all lighten up. And then Clark comes back and dominates. I mean, Cheryl Swoops can say whatever she wants. Clark dominated. She dominated. The Fever turned things around. They get to the playoffs. I see the fan base rally around the team, rally around the other players on the team, like Aaliyah Boston, like Kelsey Mitchell, who obviously had a rough game last night, like Lexi Hull. Finally get into the playoffs, but this other layer of the conversation keeps popping up, and that is her fans and fan behavior. And again, like, it feels like after every big game it comes up. And it's also one of those things that's not simple to just explain, right? Because you don't want to shortchange what can be disgusting, hateful stuff that people don't deserve to read or see about themselves. Racism, any of that stuff. As I've said a million times, I'll wake up every day and condemn it if that's what people think is appropriate. Like, I don't know what else to say about that. At the same time, I've also been a part of online culture, because I think a lot of the women in the league are a little chronically online. And I think a lot of the league was not ready for what comes with being big time. And that added to it as well. Because I've had people threaten my kids in DMs. I've been called all sorts of stuff. And I'm, an F+ celebrity. That's being generous. So I've seen it. I don't know what you do about it, per se. And unfortunately, it has happened. Unfortunately, I think a lot of bad actors attach themselves to the engagement that comes with a figure as popular as Caitlin Clark, who is, I still don't think some of the people around that league understand just how popular she is. And that's why when you say her fans, it's insulting to her fans, so many of you that are in here today who are great fans, because she has so many fans. She has fans who are black, white, Asian, international, lesbian, gay, straight, man, woman, child, you name it. It comes from all over. And unfortunately, some bad actors use that as an opportunity to push their hateful shit. And unfortunately, I think carnival barkers also did the same. When Angel Reese committed that flagrant foul on Caitlin Clark, that was a good example of it at the time. That was the most basketball play I said it at the time. You can find my tweet on it. If you've ever watched basketball, that didn't bother you. That didn't bother you. It was a follow-through motion. She got hit in the head. It happens. The Kennedy Carter thing was not a basketball play. Doesn't mean the entire world needed to lose its mind over it, but it wasn't a basketball play. There's a difference. And that's part of the conversation. Now, there's another part of the conversation that also has to be addressed, and that is the legacy WNBA media and the influencer types who gatekeeped the entire season. And if I'm being real with you, a lot of the people who I see saying they're sick of hearing about Caitlin Clark are the same ones who never stop talking about Caitlin Clark. They just do it in a much seedier way with a clear bias and hidden agenda. And I think they've just as the extreme Clark fans or trolls or whoever weaponized racism, I think a lot of the W legacy people weaponized it in a different way. Because eventually there was nothing to push back on Clark about with validity. She was too good. She is too good. So, because so many crashed out, because their party was crashed, that was their way to lash out. And you still see it, a way to lash out. Because, some people don't have the ability to parse also through the nuance of it, where I'm sure there are people who have received things that it shocks them and stuns them, and they're just genuinely hurt, and they deserve to be supported. But then I think there's also, I know there's also people out there who are using the guise of that to push down Clark and push out Clark's, power, if you will, or the support and the coverage and all that stuff for whatever reason that serves. There's no simple answer to it other than she ain't going anywhere. She ain't going anywhere. I've made the parallel to Michael Jordan many times. And, it's the same thing where she's exploding the league to that degree. And we're going to see her. She does anything. She does a joking TikTok with Lexi Hull, and Major League Baseball teams are begging her to commentate their game. The Indiana Pacers say, please come commentate our game. She jokes that she's going to be a professional golfer in the offseason, and the LPGA says, bet, pick up a club, come see us. Because people want a part of that motion. I'm not so sure. I've seen some needle movers. The only one in my career who I think is even in the same realm as LeBron James when it comes to the amount of attention and conversation that one player is able to generate. And that's the other aspect of it too when it comes to basketball, the race part of it. It's, the race part of it, I did never. I know there was a race component to Magic and Bird back in the day. I understand that, but that was a little bit before my time. But growing up, I never once heard Michael Jordan referred to as a black player, right? Or Kobe Bryant as a black player, or LeBron James as a black player. Those players that I rooted for, or not all of them, but who I followed and discussed all the time. It wasn't until Clark. And I think, there's just so many different variables and dynamics that play into that. Again, where she went to college, she didn't go to UConn or South Carolina or one of these heritage institutions. She didn't go, I mean, she played in the Midwest where the white folks reside, the certain type of white folks, right? She went to the WNBA, which has a whole different culture about it, obviously. And there is a thing in the WNBA that's interesting too, which I just noticed and I never thought of before, but I only noticed because of the hypersensitivity on the race, is that in the WNBA there is much more focus on it. And in the NBA, there's really no great white American players. And in the WNBA, while the vast majority of the league is black, many of the top players, or a good portion of the top players, happen to be white. Obviously, Sabrina and Stewie and Caitlin Clark. And there did seem to be like this welcome to the league moment, and you got to pay your dues. Even as far as last night, she got the crap fouled out of her last night with no fouls called, which is not typical of a superstar. The narrative in the NBA is generally, they want to extend the series to keep the most exciting, the most popular player and or team around. And in this case, if you had to guess which way they wanted her out. And I'm not saying that that's actually the case that they want, but if you had to choose one of those two extremes, that would be the one that you would choose. So it's really a wild thing. All the different factors and all the different stuff that came into this, from coverage on CNN to everybody seeing the different aspects of this unfold. And the likes of, Outkick and Whitlock and everybody jumping on board because they understood just how much of a needle mover Caitlin Clark was. Trust me, like, you can say if you want, I capitalized on the opportunity because I did. I saw in the midst of this, with all the attention on this show, that Sports Illustrated didn't have a women's basketball vertical. So I got it. And the link is in the description. So it's a fascinating thing. And I do believe the root of it has always been basketball. And the numbers that I get on my end back that up. Because the basketball related stories, or even the stories about the golf league reaching out to her, do bigger numbers. I'm looking at it right now. These are the top charting stories. Kelsey Mitchell's high five thing in the playoff loss. LPGA supports Caitlin Clark's professional golf goals. Fever Sun Series confirms Caitlin Clark does not get a special whistle. Caitlin Clark applies IOLS into WNBA playoffs with Fever. Caitlin Clark proved undeniable in WNBA rookie season with Fever. That's in the description. None of them are about like racism and fans calling it or coaches calling, and those articles have been written. So I do think it was based in basketball. And the Fever will be back, which we'll get to. Caitlin Clark will be back. But we'll never go through this exact moment in time again. This is a unique moment in time. This was something, honestly, like the most fascinating sports story I've ever seen in my lifetime. And it changed my life in some ways. So I got to pick up my kids from soccer practice in a bit. I'm going to the Giants and the Cowboys game. So let me hop into the comment section here, starting with AJ. I know Reese became who she is because of the finger wave, but is that the moment that also created Cece? I know she's great, but would as many people have been paying attention if that moment never happened? Yes. The answer is yes. Because I say this because I went through this. My boss at the time, Matt Gothard, who's the casino king on various platforms now, told me, I think he's from Minnesota or some shit. And he told me, you got to check out this girl, Caitlin Clark. And you got to do a video on Caitlin Clark. And that was well before the Angel Reese thing. And when I did that video, the numbers went crazy. Like crazy. And that was well before the Angel Reese thing. And if you recall, so was the South Carolina upset, which did massive numbers before Angel Reese was involved. Big numbers, huge, one of the biggest upsets, and Clark had the massive game, the monster game that year. So, yeah. I think she was well on her way. Did it add to it? Sure. It added to it. But it also was the beginning of some of this garbage, because I do think it's what put Angel, I don't want to say on the map, because Angel was also known before then. But it's what exploded Angel's popularity and created that rivalry, if you will. And I think the need to put Reese next to Clark did a lot of damage in some ways, because it was forced. It wasn't real. It was forced. And like to the point where I said that Angel Reese shouldn't have got a 4th place MVP vote, which she shouldn't have, and I got called a racist. And I got to tell you, that's another thing about it. Like, being called that is insulting to me. Like genuinely insults me, because of not only, well, no, because of how I've lived my life, the experiences in my life, what I've stood for publicly, who I've been around, how I raise my kids. You could go ask any one of my kids right now. You ask them, how do we treat people who may not look like us or may be from a different place than us? The same, Dad. With respect, Dad. Because I've hammered that into their brain since they were a child, so it can't be polluted by any of the other influences that they may hear. So I find it personally upsets me. And then, I get the other contingent, the Clark crazies call me soft because I'm thoughtful about things, or I attempt to be. And that's a little less, it's more obnoxious, but you get the point. Menace to Your Mama says it's simple. CC achieved a lot with an underdog. Well, yeah, and that's another thing. Like, people try to bring the championship stuff into the conversation like it's relevant. It's the stupidest shit I ever heard in my life. So it's fucking stupid. I mean, like, she didn't go to Connecticut. She didn't go to South Carolina. If you think she wouldn't have a ring if she was on LSU or South Carolina or Connecticut, you're out of your mind. It's like when people try to punish LeBron for getting the team to the finals in 2018 or in 2007. And then, like, I've seen the championship stuff brought up this year. She was a rookie. Like, if anything, you're complimenting her. What you're doing by saying she doesn't have any titles yet, she shouldn't be mentioned with these people, is complimenting her, because it shows you actually believe she belongs there, and you're just using that as your way to not anoint her yet. So that's how that shakes out. I got to go back. So those were the super chats I got so far. If you want to have your comment guaranteed to be read, you can shoot me with a super chat. But I will get to the other comments the best way I can. Nike Rawhide has been a regular here in this chat. Be at the airport for a weekend of golf in Maui, so wouldn't be here. Just to let you know, I had a blast following your segments of Clark this season. See you next season, Robin 4. Well, hope you enjoy your time there. Also, I hope through this process that many of you who came in as Caitlin Clark fans or WNBA fans became fans of me. And I hope that's the case as I figure out, content plan and what I'll do as this off season is here. I saw Cindy in the chat saying, "I hope you do college basketball." I definitely will, because I'm running women's fast break on SI now. So running a women's basketball website, I better be covering some women's basketball, right? So will that be the sole coverage? It may be. Will I start mixing back some of the? I'm not sure exactly, but absolutely I will be. So thank you and Cindy's, by the way, been here a lot. Daniel Bravado Ruiz, any reason why so much Clark post? Yes, because I'm covering it professionally. That's why. And I would be talking about it even if I wasn't. Maybe not to the extent that I am, but that would be the easiest answer because it's my job. I just happen to be my own boss now. Yeah, I mean, Clark has her maturity is beyond her years, Doug O'Connor says. Yeah, I mean, she's conducted herself brilliantly. And when people keep saying like she needs to condemn, if Caitlin Clark were to get in front of a camera every single day and condemn hate being used in her name, it wouldn't make a difference. There'd be no difference. In fact, it might make it more, to be honest. I think the more that it gets fed, the trolls get fed like the gremlins who get wet after midnight, the more powerful they feel they are. So the more they're going to try and get that attention. You don't think they want to be on the Summer Jam screen. John Johnson says the entire league is a joke. What an absolute embarrassment. Well, I mean, I don't think that's fair. I mean, that's also something I said at the beginning is I do think a lot of Clark fans came into the season disrespectful of the other women, and that caused some resentment, especially when propping up Clark's popularity. At the same time, I do think the league behaved, some of the women in the league and some of the power figures in the league behaved in a non-welcoming way. And it just never made any sense all across the board. Frank S. said, I wish that someone with some clout would shame the league into getting their act. I mean, look, LeBron James celebrated her publicly. It's the same thing. Like, you can't undo these things. Like, people are going to feel a certain way. They feel a certain way. Just like you can't control the nonsense shit posters. EMF says follow Iowa. One of the is it Stavros, one of the big Clark supporters, sent me an Iowa briefing the other day. Mike says I think the Fever need another ball handler. I mean, Clark plays so much. They just need the Fever need a starting caliber power forward. They need a bench, and they could use another wing, because Lexi Hull's the only player who's capable of playing that, and she's a little undersized. Bryce Smith, when it comes to racism, it stems from somewhere. It predominantly comes from a certain group of people. It's still very much alive, and it hasn't gone away. Look, I think, obviously, and as much as the white folks like to claim reverse racism, while that, I guess, in its most technical form can be true at times, it's not the same thing, because white people have not experienced the atrocities in this country that black people have, from slavery to segregation to lynchings to so many other things in between. And it's naive when anyone doesn't think that those things have long-standing ramifications in socioeconomic status because of where people were forced to be, their lack of access to resources and education and various things. Um, at the same time, I do think there is this current undertone, and this goes beyond just Caitlin Clark, coverage of other things that injects race and accuses people of acting in racially motivated ways where it doesn't exist. And that is very tricky and precarious because it takes away from the instances that need to be called out. Like I referred to it at the beginning of this episode here, and I'll go back to it because one of the around the time frame that I got the call sort of admonishing me for speaking out about racism and the like on a public forum when it wasn't sports related per se was George Floyd. And that came up in the Dejanay Carrington thing because of the stupid ass meme somebody made. And I'm not starting a whole argument about the semantics of that case. But we're all human beings. And we shouldn't want to see another human being treated in an inhumane way. And that's where I come from, you know. And look, like I genuinely I feel these things, man. I'm not faking the funk or anything. I'm just giving you my honest thoughts and my true assessment on the situation. Daniel R. Johnson, I'm looking forward to football now. I'll be at the Giants and Cowboys game tonight. I promise you I will follow some Iowa women's basketball games. Katie shares some of the ratings. 2.5 million people watched the Fever game last night, peaked at 3.4 million. Frank S. says the bad actors start with mainstream media, the league, and some other players. The fan only reacted to the stuff that was being heaped on Clark. Well, look, I think some of the other players did act in a way that showed, I'll use the word resentment. I think that's the fairest word. A lot of people like to say race. I don't think it was motivated by race. I really don't. That wasn't I think most of that resentment was motivated by Clark coming in with all this attention, despite the fact that a lot of these other women have worked really hard to get where they were, everybody crediting her for everything that had ever happened in the league and everything before, and some of the fans crapping on them. And I think that's where some of the resentment came from. But once you saw Clark was the goods, and once you saw how Clark conducted herself, that's where the actions started to become a little gross at times. But the media, for sure, I mean, mainstream media, again, ESPN pushed the Rookie of the Year thing to a comedic way. It became a parody, the way that the Rookie of the Year thing was pushed. A parody. And I think it only fueled this because it forced Angel Reese somewhere she shouldn't have been. And then there's the other bad actors in the media who saw the engagement and the attention that Caitlin Clark's name brings. And you have it all across the board, right? I mean, you have it in the YouTube community, but you have it in the right-wing community too, like the right-wing media personality types who saw it as like chum for sharks to throw out these lesbian black women hate Caitlin Clark because she's white and straight, like that stuff too. AJ Schreiber, Iowa fully sold out season tickets for the entire year. I saw that. That is pretty cool. 15,000. Sabadog Gizadong, they want the OGs to play the finals. Well, I think one of the ways you'll see the benefit from this is that the Aces and Liberty series is going to do big numbers. Because it's a compelling series, but even if some of the people who leave because they're not interested no longer with Clark not around, others are going to stay. And let's say 15% of Clark's fans stay. That's a huge boost. That's a huge boost for the league. And I do think where I think the real effect is going to take place is the next generation. Because just like anything else, when a new generation comes in, it's going to eventually replace the old generation. I don't mean that in a negative way. It's just you're going to get people rallying around the new faces and the faces that they identify with. So it's Clark and Paige and Juju and that group. And like when you see, watch how celebrated the next Olympic team is going to be. Let me put it that way. Yellow BK says, I'm not a CC fanatic. I think she's a good player, but I've seen many jacked up comments towards the other player in her name. Sure. But again, I mean, look, this is what Caitlin Clark said about this. I mean, she said this. This post has 7 million views just on X. This James Boyd, who writes for The Athletic.
Caitlin, I know you mentioned that, you want to focus straight on basketball. Definitely respect that. But when, just asking you directly, when people use your name for racism, misogyny, whatever, what is your response to that specifically?
Yeah, I think it's disappointing. I think, everybody in our world, deserves the same amount of respect. The women on our league deserve the same amount of respect. So people should not be using my name to push those agendas. It's disappointing. It's not acceptable. But yeah, I mean, this league is a league I grew up admiring and wanting to be a part of. Like, some of the women in this league were my biggest idols and role models growing up and helped me want to achieve this moment right here that I get to play in every single night. So just treating every single woman in this league with the same amount of respect, I think is just a basic human thing that everybody should do. Like, just be a kind person and treat them, how you would want to be treated. And I think it's, very simple.
So what else would anyone like Caitlin Clark to say or do? Honestly. Because I do think at some point it becomes a sneak way to attack her. And to attack her fans who come in good standing. Aside from the ones who are doing the stuff that should obviously be condemned. AJ says, look what the Dream Team did to inspire Euro basketball. Took 10 or so years, but Euro players are great now. CC will do the same for the next generation of girls. I agree. And maybe for international basketball too. For sure. Sorry, I'm trying to get through that kicked me back to the beginning of the comments here. Terry Ross says, there is no hate. Sports fans have always been frightening. Well, some of the stuff that has been sent is hate. I mean, but yes, sports fans have always been wackos too. That's the unfortunate part, like I said, of being a big boy league or big girl league. Vonda Phillips says, if it's a foul, they should call it. I don't care if you're green, white, a rookie, gay, or straight. If it's a foul, well, I think everybody agrees with that. Menace to your mama. I hope that's the case. 1 second, guys. Rohan, come here, bud. It's okay. It's okay, buddy. Come here. Sorry, my wife went to back to school night. My kids are at soccer practice. Two of the three at soccer practice. I'm sneaking this in before the Giants and the Cowboys game, but my youngest is having a tough time, so I'm inviting him in here to make sure he's okay. Hey, buddy. Look, you want to sit with me for the stream for a minute? You want to say hi? It's okay. We're going to leave soon. We're going to go to the football game, okay? You want to go to the football game? You want to go to the football game? You want to say hi to everybody? Who's your favorite basketball player? You can talk. Who's your favorite basketball player? What? Say it. Who were you trying to watch on the TV last night? Who are you asking me about? Why are you being so shy? All right, you're going to have to go if you're going to be shy. You got to talk. This is a talk show. Caitlin Clark? Yeah? Okay. Here, you want to go play? You can play right there with your car, okay? While I do the show, okay? Everything's okay. All right, where am I at with the comments here? Britt Ratcliffe says people can forget refs also have biases. These biases can affect whether they call a foul or not. I guess that could be subconscious is what you mean. Good evening, Ernesto. How are you? Hugo Hirosa says this moment in time enraptured everyone and made us all want to be witness to history for some reason that bugged everyone in the WNBA, as if the NBA doesn't go through it with new stars. JD Mac 44 says, I just saw a clip of her highlights during the NCAA men's tournament, immediately was drawn in. She's amazing. Well, I mean, if you would have told me that the women's tournament would outrate the men's, I would have told you were absolutely insane at a time in the past. But that is indeed what happened. Dale Powell says, CC, Kelsey, Boston, Lexi, and Satu, please buy Nalissa. Well, look, I don't think you got to worry about Nalissa being on the team. Gary Osborne says, check out this year's WNBA financials. Well, look, the new media rights deal is going to change things. Caitlin says, you need to understand racist doesn't have anything to do with race anymore. It means, well, look, that word, the other word you use shouldn't be used. And that's a problem if that's the case, because we do need to call out racism where it exists. Absurd Duck Gaming. Robin, you are clearly a good person. Thank you for being you and raising your children the right way. Hey, thank you. I appreciate that. Rohan, could you lower whatever that is over there? Yes, she would definitely have a ring if she went to one of those schools.
It was the elephant.
It's an elephant? Okay, good. Let's not make the elephant noise.
Okay.
Cindy, appreciate that. Yes, I'm going to do all of that women's basketball stuff. Menace to your mama. I'm covering women's basketball on the website here. I on this channel, I may do some other. We'll see. I don't know exactly what the plan will be, but yes, I will definitely be covering women's basketball. Absurd Ducking. I would love to write a book on this season. I'm gonna kick the tires on that. The actual writing of it is not the problem. It's getting the publishing company and the advance and all that stuff. This is a good point, Ivy. Clark could post all the nasty messages she gets too, but she's a professional, which is true also. What's up, Stavros? I appreciate your good-natured experience. My guy Basil, who likes to give me some trash or some blowback, but that's fine too. AJ says, let's go Cowboys. Let's go Giants. Oh, do you go to Iowa? Is that why? I love Jay's videos. Get it out the net. He does a great job with that. Got to pull up to an Iowa with your game. Well, let's do it. Let's make a date out of it. Mamba Level says the league wants world peace. People can make fake accounts and buy bots. Why they run with this Twitter narrative is wild. Robert says, wow, 3.4 million viewers. Look, I think I tell you this right now because it's going to be the truth. Nothing that anybody does is going to compare to what the Fever and Caitlin Clark did. But the numbers will be higher than they were. And that's the point. That's growth. The numbers will be higher than they were. Phil Siobhan says, I really like your commentary on the game, its history, and its stakeholders. Never watched the W before. Accidental stub or sub. Sorry, guys. My Rohan is causing chaos in here, and I do have to go pick up my kids from soccer practice and get to the Giants-Cowboys game. Just a kid from Brooklyn says, disappointed in the Fever loss, but I'm definitely supporting the Liberty to win the chip. Let's go New York. Let's go. Let's go Liberty. I'm going to be in Barclays for one of those games. I'm rooting for the Liberty and the Lynx. Liberty and the Lynx. That's who I'm rooting for. Phil, this is finishing his other thought. Accidentally stumbled on one of her games. Love the speed. Yeah, look, she's just objectively entertaining to watch play. Objectively entertaining to watch play. And that's such a huge part of it. Is this true? What's up, Sean? How are you? Let me see if she did. No, she did not delete her Twitter. So that's not true. Whoever posted that. Oh, Raj was super happy about Jey Uso winning. And Sean, SummerSlam is coming to MetLife, so I'm going to be there in August, almost assuredly. Melissa is definitely gone, AJ. The WNBA definitely needs better refs, Crystal. I don't know if I've seen you in here before. Welcome. Doug says, Robin, sometimes you drive me nuts being too reasonable, not advocating for CC and Fever. But I see you with your son and it warms my heart. Thank you. I appreciate that. I do my best, guys. I do my best. And I try to look at things without, just emotion. Phil Liberty, Boston is a perfect pick and roll partner. Yeah, Boston's a really intelligent player. She played her heart out. Look, they could have won the game. I thought they were going to win the game when AB hit that one layup. The two key sequences to me were DeWanna Bonner matching with the three, and then Kelsey Mitchell's turnover. That was just a really, really tough turnover. But I do thank you all for your support throughout this season. I won't be going anywhere. I'll be here. We'll continue to cover and follow women's basketball together. I hope, like I said, that through this you have become fans of mine and will be fans of anything else I choose to cover. Please check out Women's Fast Break on SI. Please like and subscribe to the channel. And until the next one. And I'm not going anywhere. Maybe I will take a vacation, like an honest to goodness vacation at some point, but I'm not going anywhere. So this is not goodbye. Just see you next time. Yeet.